So, you want to make a prototype, but you don't know how? In this video, I'll show you a few examples of some prototypes I've made in the past. Because making a prototype isn't that hard, you just need to start. So for this first prototype, my idea of the game was that the player would be a bomb with a long fuse hanging out. The fuse would become smaller and smaller every few seconds. The player could shoot part of his fuse at another player to reduce their fuse quicker, so they would explode. However, every shot uses a little bit of the player's own fuse, so their own health would go down by a little every time they shoot. For this prototype, I didn't quite know how to start. So after a while, I came up with the idea to just make a prototype that consisted of only the core mechanics in the game. No fancy art, no complex mechanics, just the core, so I could test if the mechanics would be fun enough to continue with this project. These were the things I needed. 2 players that could move around and jump, a health bar which would lose health over time, and a shooting mechanic that would damage your own health a little, and if the other player was hit, it would damage their health by a little more. I made this prototype in a few hours and I was able to test it the same day with some people from my school. This was very handy because I immediately gained feedback, so I could continue the game the very next day. So this is what the game looked like. It's very simple and super ugly, but it worked, and I was able to test the mechanics. I guess this shows how little you need to start prototyping. I mean, I made this on my own in a few hours, so I'm sure you can make something as ugly as this to test out your idea for the first time. I also learned a few things making this first prototype, which was a nice bonus. Prototyping this way, I was able to quickly make changes and improve the game to the point where it's at right now. It looks a lot better than the first prototype, but the core is the same. This doesn't always happen though. I was working on a different game where I made this prototype. It's a game where one player is a pigeon who has to poop on the other player's head. After some testing, I found out that the game was unbalanced and it just didn't work, even though it was funny for a couple of seconds. And even though this was a failure, it got me further into the project. And I'm glad I tested so early because it would have been such a waste if I kept working on the game for a few more weeks only to discover that it wasn't fun at all. With every prototype, you learn a little more about the tools you're working with, so there's really no reason not to prototype. Even if it doesn't work out, you still learn something valuable, and your next prototype will be better and better, until it isn't a prototype anymore, but a full game. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something about the value of making a prototype. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing.